The rain hammered against the windows of our small cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 20 years, Bethany and I had built a life here, a life I thought was filled with love and mutual respect. I'm Quentin, a 46-year-old IT consultant, and until recently I believed I had it all: a beautiful wife, a comfortable home, and a future stretching out before us like a sunlit meadow. Now that meadow was a ravaged battlefield. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Bethany, always meticulous about her appearance, began spending extra time getting ready in the mornings. New clothes appeared in her wardrobe, clothes that were younger, more daring than her usual style. I chalked it up to a midlife refresh, a desire to feel good about herself. But then came the late nights at the office, the business trips that seemed to multiply overnight. Bethany worked as a marketing manager, and while her job could be demanding, this felt different. There was a guardedness in her eyes, a hesitation in her voice when she spoke about her work. I tried to talk to her to ask if everything was all right. "Of course, darling," she'd say, her smile a little too bright, a little too quick. "Just a lot on at the moment, you know how it is." And I wanted to believe her. I truly did. I loved her, trusted her, and the thought of her being anything less than honest with me was unbearable. Then came the phone. A second phone, hidden in the back of her closet, tucked away beneath a pile of scarves. I stumbled upon it while searching for a tie. It was small, sleek, and unfamiliar. My heart clenched. Why would she need a second phone? A wave of nausea washed over me as I reached for it, my hands trembling. It was password protected, of course. But Bethany, in her haste, had used the same password as her main phone, our anniversary date. I punched it in, my breath catching in my throat as the screen unlocked. The messages were there, stark and undeniable. A series of texts and photos exchanged with someone named Alistair. They were intimate, suggestive, and filled with a longing that made my stomach churn. "Can't wait to see you on Tuesday," one message read. "Thinking of you all the time," another said. There were photos too, selfies of Bethany smiling seductively, and a few that were far more explicit: Alistair. The name echoed in my head, a venomous whisper that poisoned everything I thought I knew. Who was he? What did he mean to Bethany? And how could she do this to me, to us? The next few days were a blur of shock, anger, and disbelief. I barely slept, replaying the messages in my head, searching for answers, for some explanation that could make sense of this betrayal. I considered confronting her immediately, but something held me back. I needed to know more to understand the full extent of her deception. I started following her. It felt sleazy, invasive, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see it with my own eyes to confirm my worst fears. On Tuesday, I watched her leave the house, dressed in one of her new outfits, her face carefully made up. She told me she had a meeting with a client in London. I followed her car, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. She didn't go to London. Instead, she drove to a small, secluded hotel on the outskirts of town. I parked across the street, my vision blurring with tears as I watched her walk inside. A few minutes later, a man emerged from the hotel, a tall, handsome man with a confident swagger. It was Alistair. I sat there for hours, watching the hotel, my mind racing, my emotions churning. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. How could the woman I loved, the woman I had shared my life with, betray me in such a callous way? Finally, as dusk began to settle, they emerged from the hotel, holding hands, laughing. I wanted to rush across the street, to confront them, to scream at them. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by pain, by the sheer magnitude of her betrayal. I drove home in a daze, the rain still falling, the world outside a gray, indistinct blur. I walked into the house we had built together, the house that now felt like a prison. I sat in the living room, staring at the fireplace, the embers of the dying fire mirroring the dying embers of my marriage. Bethany came home a few hours later, her face flushed, her eyes bright. "How was your meeting?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "It was fine," she said, shrugging off her coat. "Long, but productive." I stood up, my legs trembling. "I know about Alistair," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Her face paled. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "The phone, the messages, the hotel," I said, my voice rising. "I know everything." She stared at me, her eyes wide with fear. Quentin, I can explain, she said, her voice shaking. Explain, I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. Explain how you could betray me, how you could lie to me, how you could destroy everything we built together. It just happened, she said, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened, I repeated, my voice incredulous. You just happened to have a secret phone. You just happened to meet him at a hotel. You just happened to sleep with him. She didn't answer. She just stood there crying, her face a mask of guilt and shame. I loved you, Bethany, I said, my voice breaking. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away for what? A moment of excitement, a fleeting affair. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said, my voice cold. It's over, Bethany. I want you out of my house. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Quentin, please, she begged. Don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. There's nothing to work through, I said, my voice firm. You broke my trust, Bethany. You destroyed our marriage. I can never forgive you. The next few weeks were a living hell. The divorce proceedings were messy and acrimonious. Bethany tried to fight me on everything, clinging to the wreckage of our marriage like a drowning woman. But I was determined to be free of her, to escape the suffocating weight of her betrayal. I discovered that Alistair was a colleague of Bethany's, a younger, more ambitious man who had clearly charmed her with his flattery and attention. He was married too, with 2 young children. I considered telling his wife, but I ultimately decided that it wasn't my place. Let him live with his own guilt and deception. As the divorce neared its end, I started to feel a sense of relief, a sense of freedom. I knew it would take time to heal, to rebuild my life, but I was determined to move on, to find happiness again. Then, a month after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter. It was from Alistair's wife, Isolde. She thanked me for not exposing their affair, for sparing her and her children the pain and humiliation. She told me that she had found out about Bethany and Alistair a few weeks after I did, and that she had filed for divorce immediately. Alistair, it turned out, had a history of infidelity. Bethany was just the latest in a long line of women he had seduced and discarded. Isolde also told me that Bethany had been fired from her job. The company had a strict policy against employees having affairs with each other, and once the divorce became public, her superiors had no choice but to let her go. Bethany had lost everything: her husband, her job, her reputation. She was alone, adrift, and utterly miserable. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of justice. She had made her choices, and she had to live with the consequences. I wasn't responsible for her happiness or her unhappiness. I was only responsible for my own. I sold the cottage in the Cotswolds. It held too many memories, too much pain. I moved to a small apartment in Bristol, a city I had always loved. I started painting again, something I had neglected during my marriage. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt overwhelmed by sadness and loneliness. But I persevered, focusing on my own healing and growth. I learned to forgive myself for trusting Bethany, for believing in her love. I learned that betrayal is a part of life and that it doesn't have to define you. One sunny afternoon, while sketching in a park, I met a woman named Isolde. She was an artist too, with a warm smile and a kind heart. We started talking, and I found myself drawn to her intelligence and her passion. We began dating, and soon I realized that I was falling in love again. Isolde was everything Bethany wasn't: honest, compassionate, and fiercely loyal. She helped me to see that there was still beauty and goodness in the world, that love was still possible, even after such a devastating betrayal. Years later, I received an email from Bethany. She was living in a small town in France, working as a waitress. She apologized for everything she had done, for the pain she had caused me. She said she understood now that she had made a terrible mistake and that she would never forgive herself. I replied to her email, telling her that I had forgiven her not for her sake but for my own. I told her that I hoped she found peace and happiness in her life. And then I deleted her email address and moved on. I never saw Bethany again. But I often think about her, wondering if she ever found the happiness she was searching for. I hope she did. Because in the end, that's all any of us want: to be loved, to be happy, and to live a life filled with meaning and purpose. And while Bethany's betrayal had shattered my world, it had also taught me a valuable lesson, that true happiness comes from within, and that it's never too late to start over. Time continued its relentless march, blurring the sharp edges of the past. Isolde and I built a life together, a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. We traveled the world, explored new cultures, and supported each other's dreams. We created a family, not through blood but through choice and commitment. Isolde's two children from a previous relationship became my own, and I loved them as if they were my own flesh and blood. One evening, while sitting on our porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Isolde turned to me and said, "You know, Quentin, you're a stronger person than you think you are. You went through hell and you came out the other side, not just surviving but thriving." I smiled, taking her hand in mine. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. "You showed me that love is worth fighting for even after you've been hurt." She squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with love. "We all deserve a second chance, Quentin," she said. "And you, my love, deserve all the happiness in the world." And in that moment I knew that she was right. I had been given a second chance, a chance to create a new life, a life filled with love, joy, and purpose. And I wasn't going to waste it. One day, years after the final email exchange with Bethany, a mutual acquaintance mentioned in passing that they'd seen her. Apparently, life hadn't been kind. The waitress job hadn't lasted, and she'd bounced from one low-paying position to another. Alistair had long since moved on to another affair, leaving her scarred and alone. The acquaintance hinted at a deep regret etched on Bethany's face, a silent acknowledgement of the life she'd squandered. I felt a flicker of something akin to pity, but it was fleeting. My focus was on my present, my beautiful life with Isolde and our family. Bethany was a ghost from a past I'd laid to rest. Her choices had led her down a path of sorrow, and while I wouldn't wish ill on anyone, I couldn't deny the karmic justice in her situation. Life, I realized, is a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, love and betrayal. It's how we choose to weave those threads together that determines the beauty and strength of the final design. Bethany had chosen to unravel her tapestry, while I had chosen to create a new one, brighter and more resilient than the last. And as I sat there, watching the sunset with Isolde by my side, I knew that I had made the right choice. I had chosen love, forgiveness, and the courage to move on. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all. It's been years since the betrayal, and I rarely think of Bethany. My life is full, rich with love and purpose. Isolde and I have built a beautiful life together, filled with laughter, adventure, and unwavering support. I've learned that forgiveness is not about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment. It's about choosing to move forward to create a future filled with joy and love, despite the pain of the past. And that, I believe, is the true measure of a man. I've also come to understand that betrayal, while devastating, can also be a catalyst for growth. It forces you to confront your vulnerabilities, to question your beliefs, and to ultimately emerge stronger and more resilient than before. It teaches you the importance of self-love, of setting boundaries, and of choosing to surround yourself with people who are worthy of your trust and affection. It has also taught me the importance of being honest with myself and with others, to be clear about what I want and what I'm not willing to accept, to communicate my needs and expectations clearly and respectfully, and to walk away from relationships that are toxic or unhealthy, no matter how difficult it may be. And so I share my story, not as a tale of woe, but as a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of forgiveness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. For to be human is to be vulnerable, to love, to trust, and to sometimes be betrayed. But it is also to have the capacity to heal, to grow, and to create a life filled with meaning and purpose, even in the face of adversity. And that, I believe, is a story worth telling. As the years have passed, I've often reflected on the events that unfolded during that tumultuous period of my life. I've come to realize that betrayal, while deeply painful, can also be a profound teacher. It forces you to confront your own vulnerabilities, to reevaluate your priorities, and to ultimately emerge stronger and more resilient. I've learned that forgiveness is not about condoning the actions of others, but about releasing yourself from the grip of anger and resentment. It's about choosing to move forward to create a future filled with joy and love, despite the pain of the past. I've also learned the importance of self-love, of setting boundaries, and of surrounding yourself with people who are worthy of your trust and affection. It's about recognizing your own value and refusing to settle for anything less than you deserve. And finally, I've learned that life is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, moments of joy and moments of sorrow. But it's how you navigate those challenges that ultimately defines you. So, if you're reading this and you've been betrayed, know that you're not alone. Know that it's okay to feel angry, sad, and confused. But don't let those emotions consume you. Use them as fuel to propel you forward to create a life that is even better than the one you had before. Believe in yourself, trust your instincts, and never give up on the possibility of love and happiness. Because in the end, that's all that truly matters. And always remember, you are stronger than you think you are. You have the power to overcome any obstacle, to heal any wound, and to create a life that is filled with joy, purpose, and unwavering love. Believe in yourself and never give up on your dreams. I hope my story has offered some measure of solace and inspiration. Remember, even in the darkest of times, the human spirit has an extraordinary capacity to heal and to find new beginnings. Embrace your journey, learn from your experiences, and never lose hope in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. I wish you strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief in your own capacity to create a life filled with love and joy.